Possibly the most prevalent and easy to play genres on Roblox are simulators, as they require little skill and have quick progression. And of all the simulators on Roblox, one stands out as being the most active and having the most longevity on the platform. Beesmas Simulator has been a top game on Roblox for over 6 years, averaging at least 20,000 concurrent players for most of its time on the platform. Wherever you search on Roblox, you're bound to see this game pop up, as it's one of the most entertaining in Roblox history. And the main reason it's so popular is its spectacular updates. Because while most games on Roblox update relatively frequently with minor patches or reworks, Beesmas updates are always guaranteed to have something game-changing, whether it be new quest lines, game modes, bees, or tools. Because the game revolves so heavily around its updates, the quality of the update can make or break the game, and with the game's longevity, it's clear that Onett has done something right with these updates. So let's start with the first one. It's April of 2018, and the game was new and on the rise, having been released just 1 month before. Beesmas was already getting lots of traction, and Onett knew that the first update would have to be amazing to increase the hype around the game. He got to work and crafted an update to the game in just 20 days after the release. Knowing the importance of the first update to any game, he used it to add lots of key stuff. Players were amassing 25 bees and beating the game relatively quickly, so he expanded the maximum hive capacity. As well as this, he added hats, an important characteristic of the game that offers passive bonuses to you and your bees. And one huge thing about the game that separated it from the rest of the time was the multitude of NPCs around the map. In particular, Blackbear was the one that new players would go to first, as he was the closest and had arguably the best progression out of all the NPCs. Seeing that players really enjoyed his questline, Onett added 20 more quests that were much more challenging, but still really enjoyable, as players loved the grind for achievements in Beesmas, as it was unlike that of any other simulator. He also used the update to rebalance a lot of things, like the cannons, which would shoot players in weird directions, which was the most prevalent bug in the game. Overall, this update was a success, as it addressed virtually everything about the game that can be improved. Players loved the new content, and it looked really good for the future of Beesmas. While the first update to Beesmas holds extreme importance and nostalgia, this next update set the tone for how much potential the game truly had. To learn about that, we have to flash forward to September 2018, where the first monstrosity of an update was released. This update would see the day and night cycle, which was a pretty common aspect of Roblox games, and its addition would be huge for the game, as it would hold some pretty key things, like the Vicious Bee, which was a new mob that spawned in a random field at night to attack a player. Killing it dropped stingers, which could either be used for a short attack boost or to craft a personal Vicious Bee for your hive. The night cycle would also spawn fireflies, which would spawn in a field to drop moon charms, which were used for a moon amulet, which boosts stats like pollen and honey conversion. With this amount of content packed into one aspect of the game, players would recognize the variety that the game holds and be pushed to grind even harder. The addition of a Vicious Bee would allow hives to be way more efficient at killing mobs, and players would quickly find out that this was a must-have in any good hive. That wouldn't be it for this update, as the concept of sprouts would be added, and collecting a certain amount of pollen, depending on the rarity, would pop it and yield tons of rewards, which was huge for early and mid-game players. A new traveling bear would come into the game as well, giving quests and sporting new boots, which were another equipable that came in the game. As well as that, Grandmaster badges would be added, as well as a new shop called the Badge Bears Guild, which would hold new sprinklers. Bees can now be leveled up all the way to 15, which makes killing mobs and collecting pollen way easier. This combined with the new wealth clock made players stay in the game for much longer, as there's now motivation to do so. Sprinklers made the boosting capability much higher and allowed for much easier grinding. Above all, this gave endgame players much more to do, and made it extremely hard to get bored compared to other simulators at the time, therefore solidifying the game as a top contender to be the future of Roblox. But one thing that virtually every popular Roblox game has is a holiday update, as more people are off of school and the time people have to play is at an all-time high. And as Christmas rolls around in our timeline, this leads us to the third heavenly update. Onett knew that he would have to compete with every other Roblox game creator for attention during the holidays, so he used this update to make it the biggest yet. Onett would start Beesmas by adding a new bear to the game, who would give quests that need to be completed for presents, a new concept in the game. Bee Bear's ultimate reward, however, would be the Festive Bee, which was a strong red bee whose signature ability token would be a festive gift, and collecting this token would bring the entire server a temporary 100% instant conversion buff. If a player wanted to fast track this entire process, they could buy the Winter Wonder Pack for 3,400 Robux. Onett made the final Bee Bear reward 500 tickets for these players, creating motivation to finish the questline despite already getting the bee. With this update came some secrets too, as Bumblebee Man would make his first appearance into the game. Players would need to believe in him to finish the Bee Bear questline, and he would end up bringing the game some serious lore in the future. As well as the Beesmas content, 10 new Science Bear quests were added, which unlocked 2 new NPCs that could only be interacted with using the translators he gives you for completing them. Overall, this update made progression in the game game far easier than before, and players who would come to the game during this time would find theirs to be really fast, creating lots of incentive to keep going. For players who already played, the new mechanics and items would allow for much more to discover, and the grind for those materials increased playtime even more. With this update, community engagement increased significantly as more YouTube content came out on the game, spreading the Beesmas hype outside of just the game. As well as this, loads of players were buying the Beesmas pack, meaning that lots of new money was coming into the game, increasing Onett's motivation to keep developing it. And the biggest thing of all was that because this was a Christmas update, it could be repeated, guaranteeing that the game would have at least one big update every year, which gave players something to wait for. However, players would be worried about how the game would perform when Beesmas was over, and whether it would be as lively as before. And players didn't need to worry for long, because our 4th Heavenly update comes in September 2019, and this update went down as one of the most substantial in the history of Beestorm Simulator. The Windy Coconuts update would bring the game a whole new zone for endgame players with 35 bees in their hive. This zone contained 2 high-level fields, one for white hives and one for red hives. In the middle of those 2 fields, a new barrier called Spirit Bear would reside, dishing out 3 quest lines of the hardest quest yet. In return for completing each quest line, Spirit Bear would give out a Spirit Petal, which became the most valuable item in the game at that point. There would be 2 new shops added in this zone as well, the Coconut Cave and the Petal Shop, which would hold 2 items that require Spirit Petals to purchase, the Petal Wand and the Petal Belt, the 2 strongest items in the game at that point. In the Coconut Shop, you could buy the Coconut Canister for 25 billion honey, which was by far the best backpack in the game, and something all players work towards. At the top of the new zone, however, was a wind shrine that gives RNG-based items and boosts depending on the item a player donates. If you were to donate a Spirit Petal, you can get a Windy Bee after donating a random amount of Cloud Vials. This RNG element was one that players didn't really like, as it meant a lot of suffering in the game. However, there was a pack for 800 Robux to buy the first edition Windy Bee, and plenty of players just bought that instead. The Windy Bee had a wild variant, and like the Vicious Bee, killing it drops items that help players unlock it for themselves. If we go back to the Coconut Field, the Coconut Crab would jump out at players, and with 250,000 health, it was the strongest boss the game has seen to date. Depending on the time taken to kill it, it would drop some number of coconuts, tropical drink, and other items to help with the crafting of the backpack or the new boots. I can go on and on about what new content was in this update, but it would make the video really long. That's just how good it was. The point is, this update was massive for endgame players, as after Beesmas, they were in a period of wondering what was next for them to do having completed the game. This update held seemingly infinite content, and it was very hard to finish all of it, so playtime increased even more. As for the new players, they spawned in facing the new 35B area, showing them what they could work for to achieve, which built community in the game. The Beestorm community had worried about how the game would top its Christmas update, and this update proved that players didn't have to worry about anything. Most importantly, this gigantic update set the precedent that if Onett was quiet for a long period of time, players should expect something big to come to the game. But how long could he keep this up? We flash forward to April for our next update, and Beesmas has just concluded. There was a minor dry period after Beesmas 2019, as that update contained lots of key stuff, like a whole new rarity of overpowered bees. But this update came with a bang, adding a whole new amulet, the Supreme Star amulet, which was located in the back of the Tsar shop, and only for players with 40 gifted bees and 10 billion honey. This amulet guaranteed a passive ability for the player, and if they were lucky, they could get 2 abilities in one amulet. This update gave players a new mythic bee as well, the Fuzzy Bee, who brought an entirely new concept to the game. Pollination increases the tier of flowers, and Fuzzy Bee became the only bee in the game to achieve this, meaning that this bee was great for team boosting. Players would create hives of primarily this bee to assist top players in boosting, which smashed the limits of honeymaking in the game, and broke the barrier of having to get a high level field for a good boost. This bee revolutionized the game, but that wasn't the only thing that came with this update. Brown Bear would be reworked, giving quests every hour that scale infinitely in difficulty. Onett would also add a leaderboard for the amount of quests completed, which allowed top level players to compete with each other and increased community bonding. This update followed the 2nd anniversary of the game, and Onett used the milestone to add a strong code to the game. This would set the pattern of Onett adding codes every year for Beestorm Simulator's birthdays. This update would be a big success, as the Supreme Star amulet made even more for endgame players to grind for, and the Mythic Egg questline gave them more motivation to play. This would arise a problem, however, as the most recent updates to the game at this point had all revolved around endgame players who had finished the game and were bored. This means new players were thrown into the game feeling overwhelmed by all of the things they had to do, causing many players to... Yeah, that's a problem. Good thing the next update is... Bee Bear and the Beesmas update are back for the 3rd time, and this one holds the first ever Honey Day event. This update saw the creation of Bee Quips, which was the first ever direct buff players could give their bees. As well as this, Panda Bear's quest unlocked the Snow Bear, which grows bigger and increases its level with every kill, and it made attack a lot more fun in Beestorm, as really strong attack hives would compete to see who could get the highest level kill. As well as this, a Beesmas catalog shop was added to the right of every player's screen, and it used the Beesmas items to buy perks in the game that help with progression, motivating players to play the update through. In the second wave of the update, which arrived a little later than expected, expected, 10 newer and harder Bee-Bear quests would be implemented, with the final reward being a Festive Breath Bee-Quip for the festival, which spawned a new token called the Festive Mark, which drops tokens and boosts for a short amount of time while boosting collections. Overall, this Beesmas was like no other, as it hosted tons of new content. The Honey Day buff made for monstrous boosts, bringing attention to the top players in the game, who pushed the honey making limits of the game even further. And while the concept of Bee-Quips was a little underwhelming, players would use them to push the hive limits even further, generating hundreds of trillions of honey. The game had hit 1 billion visits shortly before this update, and that added to the hype as well. More content was being made than ever, and many of the Beeswarm content creators that are prevalent in the scene today, including myself, rose around this time. Updates were slowing down, however, and the game looked to be falling off of its peak. Over the next 3 years, there would be 2 Beesmases and no actual updates to the game outside of the event. RNG-based quests and items kept popping in the game, and players began to grow animosity towards Beeswarm because of how luck-based it was becoming. The community kept pressuring Onett to keep making big updates, but he was a solo developer, and despite working as hard as he couldn't keep up with the community's needs. Updates slowly dwindled down, Beesmases became less exciting, and endgame players got bored, as there wasn't much to do in the game. Even the top player began to fall off the leaderboard, announcing his retirement from pushing in early 2024, shortly after hitting 100 quadrillion all-time honey. This happened in the heat of a year-long dry period, as the pressure from the community got to Onett, and he stopped working to focus on his own life. There was no 2023-24 Beesmas. The yearly update cycle was broken. Players and content creators lost hope in the game, as Beesmas was the only post that kept the game alive, and it was gone.
It's literally the 27th of February 2024.
Beesmas still hasn't even been released. I mean, is there even a point to it being released anymore?
And when the world needed him most, he returned. With all of the pressure of a schedule gone now, Onett had the freedom to update the game whenever he wanted. And feeling rested from his long break, he would release Beesmas in the summer of 2024 after a 1.5 year long wait. About a month before this, Beeswarm had participated in a Roblox Classic event, adding a minigame where players must defeat slime mobs and zombies. This new content brought players back together and restored a little bit of the light the game once had. On top of that, a new concept was added to the game in stickers, which were more RNG based, but it was still satisfying to see that Onett was working on at least something. A small issue is that all of the higher level Beesmas quests require really rare stickers to complete, and players don't even get to keep them when they complete it, which drove many players to go as far as to say that this was the worst update the game has ever seen. But the reason that this is the 7th heavenly update is because this one brought all of the light that Beeswarm once had back, and the community came back together to experience it. Because the update takes place in summer, more players are available to play all day now. This update broke the cycle of scheduled updates in the winter, and kind of brings back the authenticity that Beeswarm once had, back when Onett didn't even know when or what his next update would be, and was just going with the flow. And although this update wasn't the most perfect one, it still gave the Beeswarm player base hope that the game is still alive. So while Beeswarm hasn't had the most consistent update schedule, the ongoing pattern of every update being full of content and new mechanics has kept the game on top of the list for over half a decade. The patience and persistence of the Beeswarm Simulator YouTube community and player base is what allowed hype to remain around the game for as long as it has. And without all of us, the game would never have reached the levels of success it did. So with that, let's do what we do best and keep bringing joy and fun to the game. Continue to cherish the memories Onett is giving us, and let's enjoy Beesmas while it lasts.